Exquisite Haiku is a real-time multiplayer poetry composition game that makes it possible for groups of people to work together in a synchronous visual environment to compose English haiku in a conventional 575 syllable pattern. So to see that, I'll start out here in the admin screen once I've logged in and click on the New Poem button, which takes me to a simple form with basic information about the poem. For now, I'll go ahead and make the word duration 5 minutes. So that controls the amount of time it takes for each individual word to be selected by the group. And I'll go ahead and click on Create Poem. And I'll be taken back and I'll see a new listing for the poem with a random hash to identify it and buttons for start and delete. I'll go ahead and click on the Start button to kick things off, and then click on the hash to enter into the editing environment. Okay, so in Exquisite Haiku, each individual word in the poem is selected in a sort of collaborative process of proposal and evaluation by the group. So a collection of words is proposed by the players, and then the group collectively evaluates the words and sorts them to choose one individual winner, which is then put into the poem, and the next word is composed and sort of selected according to the previous selections. So to start here, we have no words, since nothing has been picked yet. So to start, I'll begin by typing in possible candidates for the first word. So I'll click on the input here and start typing in words. So I'll do winter, always, blue, never, Martian, electrical, why, given, provided, love, where, and if. Okay, so I can keep on just sort of entering in, any words I want throughout the course of the round. And as I type them in and press enter, they get added on to this sort of vertical ranking stack underneath the poem. So basically, that stack represents the current depth chart of all the words that have been proposed for the round. And what I can do as a player is I can exert influence on the ordering of that stack by sort of spending out positive or negative votes of various sizes on the words. So to see that, I'll come here and put my cursor over electrical, click down, and drag up or down on the page. So if I drag up, I have a positive vote. If I drag down, I have a negative vote. And depending on the sort of radial distance of the cursor from the word, I can change the magnitude of the vote. So if I come up here, and then if I let go and press the space bar, it applies the vote, which then behind the scenes is applied to the word over the course of a period of time. So with this process, I can come here and just start to kind of drag out these, kind of very sort of iterative, piece-by-piece evaluations of the stack of words. Depending on what I like, I can vote it up. And if I dislike always, I can vote it down. And as I do that, the stack kind of changes size and sort of has this sort of morphing quality to reflect the current state of the voting activity. So if a word is large and red, I know it's been voted down very dramatically, and it's probably sort of, slipping down in the overall ranking. So there you can see blue sort of dropping down progressively towards the bottom of the stack. Likewise, if I take winter here and give it a very large positive vote, it starts to move upward in the stack in this sort of, progressive way. So meanwhile, over on the left side of the screen, I have this vertical stack of all the votes that are being applied. So if the main ranking stack is the kind of current aggregate state of affairs, the log stack on the left is a sort of running ticker tape of all the activity in the entire poem. So in the same way that I can come here and drag out a vote up or down, I can take any of these individual sort of listings of votes and repeat them or echo them or kind of retweet them essentially just by clicking on them. So if I come here and click on winter, the exact same vote of a positive vote of 961 points is reapplied to the word, but this time drawn out of my point account. So I can do that, as many times as I want. I can sort of click on these words here just to sort of, replicate the votes that I like. If I see something that I agree with, if somebody else votes Martian way up, I can come here and click on Martian a couple times to kind of reinforce it and sort of, duplicate the same sentiment about the word. So over time, you have this process of the stack kind of sorting out. So words will kind of float at the top, they'll be pulled back down to the bottom. Over time, the group will kind of coalesce and sort of often sort of agree around a core set of 3 or 4 words towards the top. So here we have winter, Martian, provided, and love, all up at about 70% of the current winning word of winter. And below that, it kind of drops off with electrical and Y down at about 30%. So that process continues over and over again, sort of spending down the point accounts as the timer approaches 0. And so eventually, at the end of the round, so we keep on doing this and kind of applying these votes and sorting out the stack. At the end, the word that occupies the very top choice, or the sort of top slot in the stack, will become the sort of winner of the round. So in this case, we have winter sitting on top, and over here the stack or the timer kind of counting down. So when that reaches 0, winter will lock into place, and the whole process starts again for the second word. Except this time, we now know that winter is going to be the first word in the poem, so we can enter words that sort of make sense in the context of that semantic seed for the poem. So winter, I could do winter always, winter comes, winter is, winter loves, winter tends, winter seems. So basically, any kind of word that you think makes sense or would be an interesting sort of literary aesthetic continuation of the line. And then once you've done that, the sort of entire process works in the exact same way. I can come here and just start evaluating the stack again, pulling words up and down, along with all of my sort of other players who are doing the exact same thing in parallel to me, and their actions are kind of reflected instantaneously on my screen. So this process continues over and over again until all 17 syllables in the poem are satisfied, and that could take a different number of words depending on how many syllables the individual words have. And then when the poem is complete, the process stops, and the text is sort of locked in place and unchangeable. And so what this does, over time, as this plays out, this produces poems that are kind of bizarrely coherent because of this kind of social pressure at any given point to pick words that are coherent in the context of the poem. Incoherent words tend not to get voted up because the group will often try to sort of coalesce around semantically coherent sentences. So what you have at the end of the process is a poem, oftentimes, that makes sense, that sort of appears as if it were written by a single person, and yet comes from this very kind of radically collaborative process in which it's very hard at the end of the process to trace back any individual sort of literary or artistic meaning in the poem to any individual player, because the actions are so scrambled down into the level of the individual word selections.